convinced my best friend's boyfriend to break up with her and choose me instead. And I don't feel bad about it, so hear me out. So to give you a little context and a little backstory, I had a crush on him before they even met, and she knew that. But when she came to my school and we all three started hanging out together, their chemistry was just different. I wasn't serious about him, so I was like, girl, go ahead and take him. She's like, are you sure? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yes. So they're finally officially dating. And I noticed that we don't hang out that much anymore. He doesn't say hey to me in the halls. She barely wants to talk to me. It was just super weird. So I finally run into her boyfriend's best friend. So I ask him, do you know why they won't talk to me anymore? He says, oh yeah, your best friend has basically been telling him that you get around the entire school. You're the reason that your parents got a divorce. You think you're so much better looking, but really you're not. That's why he chose her over you. Just talking major crap. After getting the tea, I run into both of them. After finding her and reading her in front of him, I tell him that he should have never left me in the first place because she's actually
cheating on him.
Just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I met my boyfriend at the gym. Yeah, I know. Terrible idea. You can say it was lust at first sight. From the moment we saw each other at the gym, we couldn't take our eyes off each other. He came straight up to me at the gym and told me that he really liked me. But I was super shy. He was just some random guy I was meeting at the gym. But he was all about me. He asked me for my number and I said no. He asked me for my Instagram and I said no. For the next 2 weeks, he would come into the gym at exactly the same time I did. I would basically go work out whenever I had my lunch break. So of course, he would show up then. Of course, slowly but surely, he would charm me. He would even bring me lunch. After about 2 weeks, I finally gave him my phone number. That's when he asked me to go have breakfast, which I thought was weird. Should have been the first red flag, right? This was his excuse. He said he worked nights, but that his schedule would change all the time. So this meant that he would sometimes work during the day or at night. It was just random. So we went to breakfast. Here's the second red flag. He asked me if we could have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we lived. We both lived near the gym. Of course, I thought this was strange, but I said sure. He picked me up, and the whole time at breakfast, he kept looking at his phone. Part 2 is up. I just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. For our first date, we went to have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we both lived. Again, this was another red flag I ignored. During the breakfast, he was on his phone the entire time, and I called him out on it. I asked him why he invited me to breakfast if he was going to be on his phone all day. That's when he made up this whole sob story about how hard his work life was, how he was always stuck to his phone answering emails and text messages from his boss. And of course I believed it. I mean, I didn't know this guy from anything. After that, he put his phone down, and I realized he was the most amazing man I had ever met. A man that can make me laugh is really important to me. And we laughed the entire time. We were telling each other jokes. We talked about family and values. We talked about our favorite foods, countries we wanted to go to, places we had been to. It was the perfect date. We even loved the same type of music, and our favorite movie was the same. So as you can imagine, I completely fell head over heels for this man. But the red flags continued. A week after our first date, he asked me to be his girlfriend. Did I say yes? Of course I did. But this was just another red flag. He began love bombing me and always wanted to be with me. But he never invited me over to his place. Part 3 is up. I just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is now my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. Every time I'd ask to go over to his place, he would say no. First off, he told me that he had a terrible roommate, that his roommate was noisy and really dirty and the apartment stank. So for that reason, he didn't want me to come over. And of course I said, yeah, that's fine. Here's the 4th red flag that I ignored. He would ask to come over to my apartment at odd hours. Sometimes he wanted to come over at 3 in the morning. Sometimes he wanted to come over super early. And other times he wanted to come over really late. Because I have a 9-to-5 job, I kept saying no. I needed to get my beauty sleep, please. But even if I said no, he would still come over. Here's the 5th red flag. He would come over to my apartment and instantly fall asleep on the couch. I was always asking him why he was so tired, and he would just say that it was too much work. Well, we've been dating now for 2 months. A few days ago, I started getting suspicious of his situation, so I showed up to his apartment. But he didn't live there. It was an office building. I asked him to come over and I confronted him. That's when he confessed that he is married, and that he's been married for 10 years. But he says that his wife is a nightmare and that he wants to divorce her. What should I do?
A guest stole our Thanksgiving turkey. I'm confused and frustrated and need to vent. We hosted Thanksgiving this year, husband and I, our 2 kids, husband's siblings and nieces and nephews, and most importantly, husband's gravely ill mother. We're all at peace that this Thanksgiving and Christmas will probably be our last holiday together. It's been emotional and exhausting, but we really wanted to make a memorable day that everyone would enjoy. Our daughter Mary is visiting from college, and one day before she flew in, she says her boyfriend Chris is actually flying to our city to visit friends over the break. Mary asked if he could come over for Thanksgiving. We've never met Chris before, but to be honest, we're not wild about him. As soon as Mary started dating him, we started seeing some worrying changes in her. Our son, who is just a couple of years older, confided in us that Mary is getting into the party scene largely because of Chris. We've tried gently bringing up our concerns with Mary, but she shuts it down and has started to pull away from us. So because we didn't want to alienate her, we said Chris could visit, but they need to stay in separate rooms. She said that won't matter because he's booked a hotel room and she'll be staying there with him the whole weekend. Okay. Cut to Thanksgiving and Mary and Chris arrive. He's not the greatest. He makes a couple of rude and snide remarks throughout the visit and hits the alcohol way harder than is appropriate. My family was in a very earnest mood, if that makes sense. Lots of emotion, and he was just dismissive and flippant and cast a shadow on everything. At one point, everyone started telling stories about their favorite holidays at mother-in-law's house when she would go all out for family parties. My husband and I stopped working in the kitchen to join the conversation. When we go back to the kitchen after maybe half an hour, I went to check the turkey in the oven and it was gone. Completely missing. I asked my husband if he did something with the turkey, and he was just as confused as I was. We looked all over the kitchen and house and couldn't find it. We go out to the living room and ask everyone if they know what happened to the turkey, and no one knows what we're talking about. At this point, I realize Chris isn't around. I pull Mary to the side and ask where he is because I don't want to jump to conclusions and make accusations. She said he had to leave to go meet up with friends. I asked her to text him and asked if he knows what happened to the turkey, and Mary kind of rolled her eyes. At this point, it's dawning on me that Chris probably stole the turkey and left out the back door while we were sharing stories with mother-in-law, but I'm so confused why anyone would do something like that. I can't bring myself to actually make the accusation out loud. So we were left in the terrible position of having everything else ready but no turkey. We had to break it to the family that we had no turkey, and everyone is confused and sad. Mary said she had to get going to an event with Chris, which deeply disappointed me. I told her as much, and she said that she'll see us again later this weekend. My in-laws went driving around to restaurants and grocery stores and pieced together enough stuff that we were able to have a meal much later than expected, but it felt like the whole day was ruined. Everyone was kind of murmuring together about Chris leaving around the time the turkey disappeared, but no one wanted to actually accuse him out loud because it's such an explosive allegation and there's not actually any proof. I'm just confused why anyone would do such a thing and heartbroken because my mother-in-law didn't deserve this at all. At one point, she teared up but pulled it together. I'm also increasingly angry with my daughter because I feel like I can't see anything because she'll just pull away more. I was talking with my son today and he told me that last night Chris started taunting him over text about the missing turkey. So that settles it. Chris stole the turkey. My son didn't say anything at the time because he didn't want to make people more upset than they already were. I've tried calling and texting Mary, but she is so far ignoring me. That's all I have to say about this.
We gotta stop with the unsafe BBLs and butt injections and any major surgeries. We gotta stop that. This woman went in for butt injections but left with no hands and feet. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. April Brown was in the beauty industry for 30 years and she owned her own salon. She was insecure about her butt and wanted it to be bigger. Every time she seen a woman with a big butt, she would say, "I'ma get me one of those when I get some money." But she never actually went through with it because she was scared. Until one day a woman walked into her salon to get her hair done and April and her started talking and eventually they started talking about butt injections. This woman told April that she did butt injections for the low and I mean cheap. That woman also came to the salon with a friend and told her friend to stand up and say, "Look at her, I did her butt injections and look how good her butt looks." So April was convinced like this is for me. Unfortunately, April thought this was a woman sent by God. She thought God knew that she wanted a big butt and God sent her this woman. So she thought, okay, so if it's in God's hands, I don't need to do any research. She trusted the woman and went to her home to get her butt injected with silicone. After the first injection, April started feeling weird and asked her to stop. Unfortunately, this was silicone found at the hardware store, so like a bathroom sealant. April then got a staph infection and unfortunately she had to cut off her hands and feet in order to save her life. Do your research, guys, even if you think it's sent from God.